we don't understand fully how the mind and the body actually are together, right? And form this coherent whole that we are and that we experience as health or as states of disease. So that's psychobiology is not a new field. It's an old field, and what we've done is uh, taken an energetic approach to understanding how mind and body intersect.
Welcome to Metabolic Mind, a nonprofit initiative of Baszucki Group transforming the study and treatment of mental disorders by exploring the connection between metabolism and brain health. Thank you for joining us on this journey. The newly established Baszucki Prize will periodically recognize an individual or team leveraging prior Baszucki Group funding to make exceptional contributions to their field. This year, the $1.5 million Baszucki Prize in Science is being awarded to Dr. Martin Picard of Columbia University. His prize is awarded for groundbreaking science connecting brain energetics and mitochondria to the human experience and the forging of the field of mitochondrial psychobiology. Columbia professor and researcher Dr. Martin Picard is the inaugural recipient of the $1.5 million Baszucki Prize for Science. And he got this award for all his amazing work in a field of mitochondrial psychobiology, focusing on energy transformation in the brain, in the mitochondria, and how this relates to the human experience. So let's hear from Dr. Picard, hear about his work, and what is mitochondrial psychobiology and how does it apply to health? All right, well, Dr. Picard, welcome back to Metabolic Mind. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, we're here to talk about this really exciting new announcement that you're the recipient of the inaugural Baszucki Prize in Science. But before we get into the prize and what it means to you and your work, for those who haven't seen our prior interview, tell us, when someone sees the term mitochondrial psychobiology, which is a lot of what you work on, they may say like, wait, what? What do those two words mean? What do they mean together? So tell us, what is mitochondrial psychobiology?
Yeah, they're two long words. Mitochondria are those little living creatures that populate the inside of every one of our cells. And psychobiology it refers to this old, ancient dualism between the mind and the body, but really it speaks to connecting the subjective experiences that we have, right, on a minute by minute basis that shapes our lives and our decisions and the way we see the world, with the way we see and interact with people around us. So that's the psycho part, right? And then the bio part is the material reality of our cells and of our brain and of our neurons and the synapses and neurotransmitters, all of this. We don't understand fully how the mind and the body actually are together, right? And form this coherent whole that we are and that we experience as health or as states of disease. So that's psychobiology is not a new field. It's an old field, and what we've done is taken an energetic approach to understanding how mind and body intersect and how subjective lived experience interact and influence the energetic and molecular processes inside our mitochondria. So how does the mind and stress and other things we experience, how does that get under the skin is kind of an old question. Now we're asking, how does it get not only under the skin but inside your cell and all the way inside your genome and your epigenome, and mitochondria are kind of right there, transforming energy for the whole system to stay alive and kind of mediating this interface that we see as a dynamic energetic interface between the mind and the body.
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting to think about that connection and exploring that connection, and I think so just sort of scientifically and philosophically interesting. But it also sort of has multiple layers because we're talking about, energy production and use and transformation in the brain. We're talking about the mitochondria which perform this, and then also how that leads to mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, sort of this spectrum of brain functioning. So what have you learned about that connection between mitochondria and what we call as mental illness or mental health disorders or mental wellness?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so much of the work, in the past decade or two has gone into mapping very low level processes, right? Like very fine grained stuff that happens inside the cell. We're talking, serotonin and, this neurotransmitter or this receptor or this gene mutation, right? Like very small stuff, with the assumption, right? That this very small stuff actually predicts or determines what happens at higher levels, right? The level of function of the neurons, that's one level up. Now you have cells talking to each other, and then you have neural circuits or big networks. And then when you bring all this together, you have a brain, right? And then when you bring all of this together, somehow, we still don't know how, you have emotions and experiences, right? And the ability to be well or not so well. And we've assumed, I think, for a very long time, and that's kind of where reductionism has brought us, that the micro level stuff actually determines in a deterministic, a strong deterministic way. If something's wrong with this neurotransmitter, then you're going to feel terrible, right? Or you're going to feel great. The story is much more complex. And I think what's been lacking in the story is really a proof, right? That what happens at the very minute micro level actually drives high level experiences. That's not always the case. And then we've lacked an understanding of how energy, right, which is what keeps us alive. But now we know that energy is not just a there to support stuff that's happening between neurons. It's actually an instructive force. So how does energy and the movement of energy between mitochondria, between cells, between brain areas, how does this actually drive experiences? And I think that's where one of the biggest gap in knowledge is.
Yeah, and you're clearly on the forefront of this field with doing some amazing research, incredible discoveries, and that's the reason why you are the recipient for the inaugural Baszucki Prize in Science. So tell us what winning this prize means to you in your work and your future research.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so grateful to the Baszucki Group for supporting us. Our lab is funded, had been funded 100% from governmental support and NIH, and there's a lot of things we can do with this, but then there are barriers and constraints, right? And we're kind of bound by the constraints of the NIH grants, and there's a lot of complexity there. A prize like this really opens up the door for creativity, for to be bold and to take risks, scientific risks. You can have a safe hypothesis. You're like, if we follow this hypothesis, we'll find something and we'll be able to publish a paper, and that's really reassuring. And then you stay within your zone of comfort. And I think that's where research is done by people, and people have insecurities, and I do too. So a prize like this really is kind of a license to think new ideas, and to collaborate with people that we haven't collaborated with before, and to make more of the NIH funded studies that we're running. So at the moment we have several projects that are funding. We're collecting precious samples from individuals who have known defects in their mitochondria, and then the grant says, okay, you have X amount of money to do these measurements. But then there's all of these beautiful, amazing questions that can be done to bridge the psychobiological processes, and we don't have the funds to do this. Well, now we have more funds that we can actually tackle some new and creative ideas. So it's really enabling. It's been transformative.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation about how, it's wonderful that the government is funding research, but it comes with restrictions, it comes with guidelines, it comes with hoops you have to jump through. But a grant and a prize like this really opens up the door. I like how you said that, for creativity and for exploration. So what are some of the areas you're excited about looking into deeper now that you have a little more flexibility?
Yeah. One window into whole body energy processes is what is circulating in the blood, right? So there are metabolites that are produced in large part by mitochondria, and then they're taken up by in one organ. Let's say the liver will secrete certain metabolites like ketone bodies in the blood, and then the neurons, right, will take up these ketone bodies, metabolize them, and then release other things in return. So the blood is really what interconnects every cell in the body. It's really amazing when you think about this. Every cell in the body, every neuron, astrocyte, liver, heart cell, every cell is interconnected. They all share this vasculature, the blood that's circulating. It touches one cell in the brain, and then a minute later, it touches your cell in the toe. And then, 30 seconds later, it touches a cell in the liver. So blood touches all of those cells, and therefore it's kind of an integrated pool of all the signals that are coming from the whole organism. So we know now there's a lot of information you can gain by profiling the metabolites over time, right? I think there's so much to learn from looking at people, but also looking at more simple biological system over time. We're dynamic creatures, and things change over time. You feel good, you don't feel good. What happened between then and now tells you a lot more than just you take a snapshot, like a one blood draw and one questionnaire or one brain scan. It only tells you so much. If you can look at things, processes over time, you gain so much more. So that's something we're interested to do using a technique called metabolomics. So you can look at all the metabolites that we know of and some that we don't know of, and then look at how this relates to mitochondrial biology and in this particular person, and how this relates to their changing states of mind over some laboratory challenges that we psychological stressors that we expose or participants to. So you can perturb the mind, and then you ask, how does this change energy metabolism? So that's one kind of question that we can ask. And there are also ways to use circulating proteins by proteomics. So then this is in the blood again, and in the saliva. So there's I think this is one area that we'll explore in more depth in the future.
Yeah. Wow. Very exciting. And now, I guess, also tell us, that sounds like a very complicated endeavor, right? So when you talk about a study like that, it's not like you get a prize today, you start a study tomorrow, and you have a result a week later, right? What is the time frame of this type of exploration?
Yeah, it's a good question. It takes a long time, one, to conceive of the ideas and refine them to a point where you can actually run a study, right? So I just mentioned a few ideas. These have been percolating for 2 or 3 years, and now they're at the point where we've thought about this enough. We've looked in the literature. We know what others have found, so we know what to look for and how, and which technique, right? Which company to use for the whatever measurements we want to do. So this takes time. That's number one. Number two, you need to have a team. And so I've worked on building a team, both internally, in my lab and with collaborators to lead those studies. Now we have a great team. So this is something that takes years to do. So the prize comes at the right time. And then once you have the money in the team, and then you say, okay, let's do this, then you need to prepare the samples, ship the samples, and then there's lag time to get the results back. And then once the results are in, those results are high dimensional. There's a lot of metabolites or a lot of proteins or a lot of people over time, and so that now you need to think very carefully about the computational approaches and the statistical approaches you use to make sure that your conclusions are robust and reproducible. And so there's a lot of complexity. So those are three big chunks, of time. So we've been developing these ideas and building our team for a few years. And now that the prize is here, we're in a good position to, I think, make good use of it in a timely manner.
Excellent. Well, very good. And very well deserved. And congratulations again. And this is, this brief discussion is just the tip of the iceberg of all your work. So if people wanted to learn more about your work, past, present, and future, where would you direct them to go?
If you're into reading science articles, you can go to our website, and we have a publications page, and so all of our papers are published there. So you can download the PDF and read through. Some talks that I've given are also available on our website, and
what's the website, just so people know?
The website is picardlab.org.
Okay. And then you're also on X or Twitter as well?
Yeah, on X or Twitter, we have a student who every Wednesday she posts a new psychobiological fact to help educate the community about the psychobiological connections that we enjoy or struggle with from time to time, and then there are vigorous discussions at time about specific topics.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.